Hello there and welcome to my review of Resident Evil 2 Remake. This isn't just a remaster, this is a complete remake of the absolute classic game from the original PlayStation. Now, it came out in 1998, so it's an old game, but it has been completely modernised from the ground up in every respect. They've got rid of the old tank controls. You used to just spin around on the spot and move forwards and backwards, which worked quite well considering that you had fixed camera perspectives in those old games. And with those fixed perspectives, it was very claustrophobic. You didn't know what was around the corner until you actually edged forward and it moved to a different camera view, and then suddenly a zombie would be in your face and you're like, I've only got 2 bullets left. So this is definitely survival horror, by the way, just like the originals. And that's the way I want it. I want survival horror, definitely. This is what Resi is all about. I wasn't a fan of 5 and 6 being more action orientated. They weren't bad games, I enjoyed them, but I like my Resi to be classic survival horror. And this is classic survival horror at its best. Capcom done an amazing job. But as I say, it has been completely modernised. Now we've gone to a camera that's just behind your shoulder, third person. The fixed perspectives are gone, it's a proper 3D world now, but it still feels claustrophobic. Capcom still managed to capture the essence of the original, even though they've completely recoded it. Hello? And it's all new graphics, new 3D models, and it uses the latest RE engine that Capcom have created. They've put a lot of money into developing this game engine, and the game looks beautiful. Hello? The texturing, modelling and animation is all superbly done. Now in Resi 2, you actually start off in a police station that used to be a museum. It doesn't make a lot of sense, but I think a police station would have been a bit sterile location. So they went with this repurposed museum. So it's now a police station, but it's still got all these statues and paintings from the museum for some reason, and they look fantastic, and it definitely adds a lot of visual interest. Now you do get to move out into Raccoon City once you escape the police station, and it is quite linear, but that's fine, you know, and there isn't an extensive amount of Raccoon City. Now the sizable midsection of the game takes place underneath Raccoon City in the sewer system, and it's pretty grim down there, but in a good way. It's fantastically realised. It's probably the best sewer system I've ever seen in the game. The architecture is really well done. It really looks like Capcom have spent a lot of time building this area and making it feel realistic, and yeah, really nasty. Like there's sewage, stuff oozing out the walls. It is really grim. There is a big enemy down there as well, waiting for you. It will have you running for your life. And the G-Virus has got down into the sewers and created some real monstrosities down there. Capcom have really gone to town. Some really gross enemies to fight. And of course, along the way you're fighting these monsters, and there's one monster that keeps coming back and hunting you. It's called the Tyrant, and the Umbrella Corporation have sent this Tyrant Mr. X to try and kill you, because they obviously want to cover up the sort of the biological hazard that they've created, and all these zombies they're trying to cover their tracks. And you can play through as Claire and Leon, just like in the original. The original actually came on 2 discs, so you got a lot of game for your money back in 1998. And you see events from different perspectives. There are different areas as well that you can't go in. Like you can go into some areas as Claire, and there's other areas you can go in as Chris. So each playthrough is different enough to make it feel fresh. And once you finish the game, you can then do a second playthrough with each character, and they mix it up again. There's even extra little locations to visit, new weapons and gear. So the replay value is fantastic in this game. It's a sizable game, and that gives you 4 playthroughs. I wouldn't say you want to do them back to back, like I did one playthrough and then I played something else. So I kind of spaced it out a bit. But every time I came back to it, I was so excited to see what was going to happen, what was going to be different. And that's why it's taken me so long to finish the game, because I've been sort of leaving it and coming back to it. Now I paid about £17 for this brand new sealed, and at that price this is an absolute steal. Now if you didn't like the original games, then yeah, this isn't going to change your mind. Yes, the controls have been modernised, and yes, we don't have the fixed perspective anymore, but it's still Resi, it's still the same storytelling, the same sort of characters, the same sort of environments, the same sort of slower paced gameplay. So I don't think it's really going to change your mind about this style of game. If you're into it, you're into it. If you're not, you're not. But if you are into it, you're going to have an amazing time like I did. There definitely is a lot of nostalgia for me going back to this title, but I can hand on heart honestly say, even if you've not played a Resi game before, this is definitely a great place to start. Now the endings on your first playthrough are quite short, particularly for Leon, so you definitely want to do a second run if you want to see the true endings. Okay, I love this game, I hope you play this game, but it would be remiss of me not to point out a few weaknesses in the game. Now, I don't want to be considered a complete Resident Evil fanboy, although I probably am. But yeah, first off, the boss fights can be a bit frustrating. Because of the nature of this type of game, the controls are deliberately made a bit loose, and when you're in a confined space with quite a big boss and you've got to shoot certain parts on that boss and that boss is quite mobile, it can be a bit frustrating. But the boss fights aren't long and drawn out, so that isn't too much of a problem. Also, the Tyrant, or Mr. X as he's sometimes called, that follows you around at the latter parts of the police station can get a bit annoying. He does add to the tension and the drama, and the first time you see him you're like, oh my god. But when he doggedly follows you around everywhere when you're trying to do things, it did get a bit frustrating for me. But then I remembered about the safe rooms and that he doesn't follow you into the safe rooms where there's a typewriter. I think I remember that from the first game. And also there are other rooms he won't follow you into. There are other side rooms like the STARS office and the clock tower that he won't come into as well. But if you don't know that, and how are you really meant to know that apart from trial and error, it can be a bit frustrating. Another thing is difficulty. Now with a survival horror game, the amount of bullets in the game is crucial. That must be tuned to perfection. You don't want to have too many bullets so you can shoot every single enemy. What you want is a situation where you have to pick and choose what enemies you actually shoot and kill, and try and get around other enemies that you don't need to kill, and conserve your ammunition. So you have to make those decisions, and that adds to the gameplay. But on normal mode, as long as you hit most of your shots, you can kill literally every enemy, every zombie in the whole game, and that's a bit of a mistake because that takes away from the survival horror aspect. And I think the game has been made deliberately easy so they don't put people off. And this is a problem with lots of games today, because most people will play this on normal and not get, in my opinion, the best experience. But when you play your second playthrough, or if you play on hard, then the ammunition is more severely restricted, and then the survival horror really kicks in, and that's when the game is at its best. They've even removed the need to use a ribbon to save your progress in normal mode, and again I think that's a mistake. Okay, so now I'm going to get a little bit into spoiler territory here, but I won't spoil too much for you. Yeah, obviously you can stop watching here, go and play the game, it's fantastic. But yeah, if you're still here, you are? Good, great, okay, I'll carry on. If you play as Leon, then you get to meet Ada Wong along the way, and she's this really kind of sexy, cool, mysterious character. Can you trust her, can't you trust her? And you do get to play as her at some point, and she has some interesting little tricks up her sleeve. I won't spoil those for you. As you play as Claire, then you meet this little girl, and you have to help her and look after her, and you do actually get quite attached to her. And again, you get to play as her at one point. Obviously she's quite defenseless, and you play kind of more of a stealthy gameplay, which is a nice refreshing change from the main gameplay, and it was really good fun. And then of course there are other characters that you meet that's different depending on what playthrough you're doing, and yeah, it's all Really, really well done.
Why? He's right behind.
Now, the real star of the show for me isn't the characters. It isn't the story. Although the characters are very cool and the story is a lot of fun. It's the environments. Like when you're playing this game, they are so beautifully constructed, from the police station that was a museum to the sewers, to the Raccoon City itself. It just looks beautiful, the amount of detail. And I love the little touches, the environmental storytelling. You know, every part of the environment has a little story to tell. You know, that you go into an office and the office will be destroyed and there'll be desks and bits of furniture smashed up, and obviously something happened here, there'll be a dead body, obviously someone got eaten by a zombie here, and but there'd be a little name badge so you can see the name of the police officer that was killed, and you'll see a little note. There'll be a little note there you can read, and it'll give you a little bit of backstory about that person's experience. So it's really rich. Like, it's a really rich environment to explore, and combine that with the beautiful rendering engine that they've created, the RE engine that Capcom have obviously put a lot of money into. Graphically it looks beautiful, and the lighting, and the claustrophobic atmosphere. I just love it. I just love these games so much. Okay, so now I'm going to delve a little bit deeper into spoiler territory. If you've played the original game, you'll know about the last area in the game and how cool it is, and that's definitely present in the remake. So if you'd like to see what that looks like, then hang around, because I'm going to show some footage now. Now again, the level of detail is fantastic. I really love this door. You open this door and there's a little kind of plant strands that kind of holding it shut, and it kind of eventually opens and the little strands fall down. I just love little touches like that. And there's some really cool enemies in here that have been infected by these sort of plants. It's really, really fun. And you need to burn these things, make them stay dead. You need to make sure you set them alight and burn them. Now, I really enjoy the little puzzles in this game. They don't tend to be too complicated. It might just be some scraps of paper with some information you've got to piece together. It may just be a little cog you find somewhere that's missing from a mechanism. But the areas are quite self-contained. So when you do find something that you need, you don't tend to have to do a lot of backtracking, and it doesn't take long to get where you need to go. It's very easy to use the map. You can see what rooms are locked. You can see what areas still need to be fully explored. They're showed in red. So you're never really lost what to do or where to go next. Now, I really love the way that Capcom have added extra weapons for you to use for your second playthrough. I particularly like Claire's handgun that she can fire from the hip. That's really cool. And also there's quite a few bonus game modes that you can unlock, and they're really well done actually. They involve you surviving and escaping certain areas under different scenarios that are quite creatively done. You actually get to play as different characters. In one scenario you get to play as this soldier that's trying to escape the lab with G-Virus within a certain time limit before the lab explodes, obviously. You can play as a young woman that's trying to escape the police chief's orphanage. I know it sounds weird. Well, it gets weirder because he's actually a taxidermist, and yeah, he's got evil intentions. Let's put it that way. It's really, really creepy. And you also get to play as a father whose child has turned into a zombie, and he's trying to escape. That's actually in the main storyline. That's a touching little bit that I put in. So these extra game modes give even more value to an already fantastic package. You just get the impression that Capcom have left this one in the oven until it's fully cooked. Unlike a lot of other games out there, yes, I am pointing the finger at you, Fallout 76. Now, there are some fun costumes to unlock for your characters. Unfortunately, quite a few of them are locked behind paid DLC, but there are a few you can unlock, and there's even a couple you can download for free. And interestingly, the ones you can get for free are the original character models from the original game in 1998. And you can play as Claire using this character. And here's a little look. And yeah, when you compare this to the actual remake version, and here's the remake version, the difference is incredible. It just goes to show how far we've come in the last 20 years in terms of computer graphics. It does make you wonder what the next 20 years has in store for us gamers. Are we going to get photo-real characters in our games in the next 20 years? Well, we'll have to wait and see. Okay, some little tips for you in this game. Once you shoot a zombie, if they fall on the floor, make sure you poke them with a knife just to make sure they're dead. And if they're not, make sure you hack them as much as you can. Although knives do break, so just be aware of that. And also, if you've got a grenade on you or a flashbang, if a zombie does grab you, you'll automatically stuff it in their mouth. And once you do that, make sure you shoot it. That's always fun. And it gives you good results. Another big tip is when you get a new item to make sure you thoroughly examine it, spin it around, zoom in, have a look, just to make sure it hasn't got any secret little openings on it, or you need to add something to it or combine it with another item to make it useful in some way. Because I did get stuck a few times when I first started playing these games, and it was because I hadn't examined something I should have. Now, my first playthrough took me about 16 hours, but I do spend a lot of time looking around. I enjoy looking at the environments, checking them all out, so you could definitely do it a lot quicker than that. And I only got a C grade. Just like my teachers used to say when I was in school, there is definitely room for improvement. My subsequent playthroughs were faster. I mean, obviously you know where everything is, and you've looked at most things by then. But yeah, I do spend a lot of time looking at stuff in the environment. I mean, look at this leather bag. They're obviously using physically based shaders here to give this realistic looking leather texture, and you see it a lot on the armchairs and other items in the game, and it just looks fantastic. I just love looking at the quality of the physically based shader work in this game. The game runs at 60 frames a second, even on the base PS4, so it feels really nice and smooth to play, and that makes the quality of the graphics even more impressive. Now, Resident Evil 7 was really popular, and it was kind of like a reboot to the series. Resident Evil 2 Remake sold about 6.5 million copies, so it's been a real success for Capcom. So Capcom have really seen quite a resurgence in the Resident Evil franchise. Like, there's still a lot of interest in it, and people want more. Now, the Resident Evil 3 Nemesis remake, that was a bit of a misstep on Capcom's part. The reviews weren't so good on that. Apparently it's a lot shorter, and there's a lot of stuff that's been missing from the original game. So yeah, that was a bit short-sighted on Capcom's part. They built up a lot of good favour with Resident Evil 2 remake, and they've kind of squandered a lot of that now. But people still love Resi, and I'm still hyped for Resident Evil 8. I've seen the trailer. I think it's called The Village, and it looks a bit more like Resident Evil 4, which was set in Italy. It kind of looks a bit more like that to me. So yeah, I would definitely suggest checking those games out as well. At the time of doing this review, there is a rumour that Resident Evil 4 is actually going to be remade next. If that's true, and if Capcom do as good a job as they did with Resident Evil 2 Remake, us Resi fans are in for a real treat. And potentially, if they get it right, it could outsell Resident Evil 2 Remake quite easily. It's a game that is well regarded by Resi fans, myself included. The remake of Shadow of Colossus by Bluepoint Games, well, it's a partial remake. They used the original codebase from Shadow of the Colossus, but they redid all the graphics, and that was a fantastic sort of remake, and I had an amazing time with it. I have a review of that. I definitely encourage you to check it out if you haven't. It's a fantastic game. But I have to take my hat off to Capcom. They have surpassed it. This is a complete remake from the ground up, and it's just superb. I mean, it's my favourite remake of all time at this point. We'll have to see how good the Resi 4 remake is. Hopefully that will come out, and yeah, hopefully it'll be even better. But it's going to be a hard task to beat this one. You can actually try the Resident Evil 3 Nemesis demo if you haven't played a Resi game before. It is still available, I think. Definitely available on the PlayStation Store, so you can test the water and see if Resi is your thing. I do have a playthrough video for the Resident Evil 3 demo, so check that out if you've got time. Anyway, that's enough rambling from me. I hope you enjoyed the review, and yeah, I'll see you hopefully in the next video. Give me a thumbs up if you appreciated this review and you enjoyed it, and goodbye for now.
Here. Come on. Over there! It's closed.